The 664th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered. Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play. Stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you guys. I don't know, a little inside 3 hours or so since Carolina, in dramatic fashion, in heart-stopping fashion, they take down the Duke Blue Devils 71-68 inside a raucous, lively Smith Center to do a couple things. They end a 3-game losing streak to Duke. They remain unbeaten at home. They keep, their winning streak alive. They've now won 5 games in a row, and they've now positioned themselves to really make a run at finishing top 4 in the ACC and securing the all-important double bye for the ACC tournament. But none of that stuff really matters. What matters is this team, with their backs against the wall, with as much adversity that they've faced in quite some time this season, trailing by double digits pretty early in the first half, trailing by double digits at halftime, trailing by 6 with 2.5 minutes to go. They made plays that you have to make to win games like this, to have moments like you have tonight where Seth Trimble hits a shot with 0.4 seconds to go to write his name into Carolina basketball history, and gave us another moment in a rivalry that, as much as college basketball has changed, what remains the same is that this is the best rivalry in sports. This is the best rivalry this sport has to offer, and we were reminded of that tonight. And we exited, the preview when we previewed this game on Thursday, and we were talking about Seth Trimble. This is you stayed 4 years. What you do in this game defines your legacy. What better way to define his legacy than hitting the biggest shot of his career? You have a head coach that's lost 3 straight games in this rivalry, that was 4-6 in this rivalry, looking for a signature moment after what happened last year. And he put on a coaching exhibition or a coaching clinic the final 2.5 minutes. And we've got so much to get to. There's so much to unpack. We're gonna have a lot of fun. This is the one time of the year where we do a podcast that's not organized. I don't have it laid out. I've got a few things that I know that we're going to get to, but a lot of this is just going to be straight from the rip, straight from the cup. We want to interact with you guys as well. So if you haven't already join the live and get in here and have some fun, because tonight was the umpteenth example why Carolina basketball is so dang important, why it's so special, and why it means so much to us. Because when you have nights like this, when you have moments like this, it's why you come to sports. It's why you invest yourself the way you invest yourself. And what started out as a great day, a game day, has turned into a great night, and one that we'll remember for a long, long time as Carolina fans, both the ones that were in the building and the ones that were able to rush Franklin Street, because we got two stormings that people will be talking about for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, we got two stormings that involved probably a lot of the same people. Everybody making the sprint from the Smith Center over to Franklin Street after the night was over. I hope there were some people that hit up Ben and Jerry's. That deserves your money more than just about anything right now, because Seth Trimble is the hero. And, talking to some of our Duke friends and everything like that afterwards, I said, we owed you guys a buzzer beater. You've gotten us twice in the Smith Center, so we kind of owed you one. And I think tonight, Carolina gets that sweet moment in the rivalry that will be remembered forever, man. I mean, it's right up there, for Carolina fans, got to be up there with the shot that Caleb Love hit in the Final Four. I mean, it's gonna be right near the top there. So it was an amazing performance in the first half by Caleb Wilson. I know we'll talk about that. He was basically what kept Carolina in the game. But down the stretch in the second half, a much better defensive performance than the first half. Just a great effort overall. They did the little things that they needed to do to be able to get the win. And Seth Trimble just steps up and gives us an iconic moment, and a great moment for him, because, you had back-to-back off seasons where he could have left and he could have gone to a different school. And in this era of the transfer portal, no one would have blamed him. But he sticks around. He becomes one of the leaders of this team, and he gets that moment for himself to etch himself in Carolina lore. Like I'm not going to say you would ever forget Seth Trimble, but he would be a guy that, depending on what this team does in the NCAA tournament, would kind of go by the wayside with some of the other Tar Heel legends. Now you will never forget Seth Trimble for this moment. You can imagine the T-shirts that are going to come out from him and everything like that. But I think it's a really special moment for him, for a guy that grew up going and watching games, watching his brother at the Smith Center. I think this is a really cool moment for him.
He in 4 years, he arrived as JP Tokoto's brother, and he's now leaving a legacy that JP Tokoto could have only wished to have even achieved. He has a quote that will live forever, that his heart and soul, they belong in Chapel Hill, like so many of ours. And then he has a shot. And the most impressive thing about the shot is that the previous possession, he could have had his moment, but give Duke credit. I think Boozer was the one that stripped him. He, excuse me, he turns the ball over. And at that point in time, you have to go get another stop to have a chance to win the game in regulation. If not, this game's going to overtime. And just the mental toughness, something that we don't talk enough about, I think, with this team. I think this team has proven, man, there's a mental toughness to them that allows you to come back and beat Kansas the way you did second game of the year. It allows you to go on the road and win a game at Rupp when you couldn't, hit the barn side of a barn for, 8 to 12 minutes of a game. To be able to win a game like this tonight, where you trailed the whole game. Carolina did not leave until 0.4 seconds were left on the clock.
Yep.
And the last time they had a shot like this go in, it was the Kentucky game that we see in the Elite Eight when we run the pre-roll. And so, this doesn't happen to Carolina. And look, when you're a historic program, you don't have heart-throbbing, dramatic wins all that often, because you're just used to winning so daggum much. But you got one tonight. You needed one tonight. And this can be a tone setter. This could be something that really does jumpstart them Yes, in the midst of a 5-game winning streak, but to bigger and better things here as the schedule and ACC play heats up. And, so we'll just go ahead and start really unpacking this event, this win. There's a couple of things I think we got to start out and talk about. And, if you would have tuned in after losses to Stanford, losses to Cal, the criticism for Carolina's head coach was high. The criticism for Hubert Davis was as high as it's been, at least on my end, since his first year, where I really got frustrated with some of the stuff that happened before Carolina made their run to the national championship. But I think you have to give him a ton of credit tonight. I thought he outcoached John Shire at the final media timeout on. The final 4 minutes, I thought our guy was better than their guy. And that's not to take a shot at Hubert for the first 36 minutes. I mean, John Shire is a darn good coach. Really good coach. Became a villain tonight, I think, and that's a really good thing for this rivalry. But I thought the last 4 minutes he was superb. But I thought he also did some really good things early in the game. Outside of the Jared Severson start, did not make any sense to me with the way that Jaden Young had played. But after Carolina got the slow start, we go and we get in the full court press. We go that 1-2-2 trap that works so well. What do you know? We got Carolina back into the game. I thought he pushed the right buttons with the rotation for the most part. It felt like he knew who to put in, when to put in, and it felt like he was maximizing the most out of those guys' minutes, especially in the second half, because a lot of guys struggled in the first half. And you needed your bench guys to show up, and you got a 3 from Luka, you got a 3 from Powell, you got some other things, but look, we talked about the pressure that was on him coming into it. 4-6 in this rivalry. We know this is a make or break year for him. This will calm a lot of the issues and the nerves that exist around him being the right man to lead this program. And I was DMing with a good buddy of mine after the game, and then this was kind of the way that I worded it, and I mean this. He was dressed like Coach Smith. And I thought the final 2.5 minutes, he coached like him. And, today's 11 years of Dean Smith's passing. And, the thought going is what better way to honor the life and the legacy that he built than beating that team in the building that bears his name, and watching our guy that's the blend of what Dean was and is and what Roy was and is, seeing that guy on the court dress like him, coach like him, and lead Carolina to a win that Dean Smith led Carolina to so many times as Carolina's head coach. It's a pretty neat thing. And it's why until my heart stops beating, I will pray that this program stays within the family, because you don't get nights like this most anywhere else around the country.
Yeah, it's incredibly special. It was definitely one of those things that we were talking about going into the day. When you realized that the dates lined up and you said this has got to be a win, guys. Like, more than anything, on a day like this, you've got to find a way to pull out a victory. And you're right. I think down the stretch of this game, you really saw some moments that were similar to what we saw from Coach Smith, or similar to some of the moments that we saw from Coach Williams, where he found a way to outcoach a guy that some people may think is better than him. His legacy may ultimately end up being better than him. But at the end of the day, Hubert is our guy. And, there were some things that were said after the game against Cal. And, some of those things definitely are regrettable. But at the same time, it was a frustrating time. And now it seems like this team is really rounding into form. And tonight did a great job of showing that. But really, you look at what he was doing with ATOs in this game. For the most part, he was pretty spectacular in those situations. That's what we're looking for, is for him to show up in those types of moments and be that great in-game coach. And, I know that there are people that are worried about him as an in-game motivator. I don't necessarily worry about that, man. I think especially this year's team and some of the teams that he's had in the past, the team 2 years ago, I think is another great example of teams that really embodied their head coach. And tonight, I think this group embodied their head coach. I mean, there was a point late in the second half where it might have been difficult for you to see up on Media Row. I mean, Hubert Davis literally jumped fully into the air, both feet off the ground, just trying to get his team into a set down the stretch.
Yeah.
I mean, he shows you those moments, and that's what we love, man. That's what makes Hubert special, is that, yeah, Roy had his things that he would do. He would get down into the crouch and everything like that. He was very emphatic. But Hubert has those things, too, that we really love about him. And I thought tonight was a great example of that. I thought he did a tremendous job coaching down the stretch when he needed to. And credit to him, man. He's taken a lot of criticism. But this dude knows how to draw up plays late. And that play, to draw that up, you get the switch to where Cameron Boozer has to try to stay in front of Derek Dixon. And, I mean, look, Cam Boozer is a really solid defender. We saw that early in the game, on Caleb Wilson before Caleb really got going. But at the same time, that was a mismatch. Derek Dixon able to take him off the dribble, and it leads to that shot from the outside for Trimble. So great job coaching that up by Hubert Davis, drawing that final play up. Even if some of the other ATO moments weren't great, I thought that was a moment that he really needed to execute, and he stepped up, drew up a great play, and it ends up working for a Carolina victory.
Let's talk about the man that we knew the moment was not going to be too big for, because nothing's too big for Caleb Wilson. This is just the next step on his journey to NBA stardom, NBA greatness, and he's going to be an all-star for the next 10 to 12 years. He's going to make a crap ton of money at the next level. What you love about him is that he's embraced everything that this level has to offer, what this level is and what it provides. And he understands what it means to play basketball at Carolina. He understands what it means to win at Carolina. And he takes the burden of performing and he takes it in stride, because, there aren't too many times I look at a guy in pregame and get concerned about their mental well-being and their mental state. But this guy, I mean, I don't want to compare him to Jordan because that's just not right, but he goes to a different place sometimes. And we saw it against Kansas, where he just went to another place and fueled a big game for him personally, fueled a big win for Carolina early on in the year. And then you have tonight, where you knew when they walked out on the court. You didn't know if the other 13, 14 guys were dressed, if they were ready to play. You knew that he was ready to play. And he single-handedly kept Carolina in it in the first half. And they were tough shot after tough shot. And he was making the plays that, we've grown accustomed to him making, but they're still, now you're doing it against Duke and how good they are defensively, and Boozer and Gongba and getting those guys into foul trouble, Malik Brown. I mean, he single-handedly was kicking all of their rear ends. And then he comes out in the second half knowing down 12, we got to get back in this thing. And, he scores, 4 quick straight points and is doing the things that you have to do. I don't have the box score up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he played every minute. I don't think Hubert Davis took him out tonight. And that happens in this game sometimes, where you've got to ride your best player. You've got to ride your man. And Trimble makes the shot. Trimble ends up being the hero. But Carolina does not win this game without Caleb Wilson. And he said on Thursday that, what you do in this rivalry individually from a stat line, none of it matters unless you win. And he said during pregame or during game day, which we had a fun time at this morning, that, this was personal because Duke stopped talking to him during his recruitment Because I think people got to remember, man, he was high school teammates with the Boozer twins.
Yeah.
Like if Duke wanted him and if Duke maybe pursued him, very good chance maybe he's playing with Boozer and they're trying to recreate in college some of the stuff they did in high school and on the AAU circuit. But for some reason, this Duke program quit talking to him. Carolina, despite, an offseason or whatever, they were able to land him, and they've built their whole entire program around him. And he doesn't end up having the moment, but he left a legacy. No matter what happens in Durham, no matter what happens if these two teams meet maybe in the ACC tournament, when we talk about the best one-off performances in this rivalry's history, when you're talking about one-and-done freshmen or even just transfers that play in the rivalry just for 1 year, we'll have to talk about his performance and how special it was, because for as good as Boozer was in the second half, and Boozer for the most part was the best player on the second floor or on the floor, I thought Caleb Wilson was the better player. I thought Caleb Wilson outplayed him for the majority of the night, and without him, none of the dramatics in the final 2.5 minutes are possible.
Well, you have to not look at the box score, and I think that's going to be difficult for a lot of people to do. But the thing is that with Caleb Wilson, if you go back and look at the degree of shots that he was hitting in that first half, I think that's what really gets you to a point where you think people are going to remember that. He carried this team in the first half, guys. Like, if he does not do what he does in the first half, there's no way Carolina's in this game. He scored 17 of the 29 points that Carolina had in the first half. Without him and Seth Trimble, Carolina was 2 of 17 from the field in the first half. So they needed that type of performance from him. They needed him to be great in this game. And I thought really from the word go, he was bought in. There was part of me that was wondering in that second half at times why they weren't going to him a little bit more. But at the same time, I think, they got what they needed from him. They needed him to be great. And he was. He really set the table. And then it was everybody else that was able to come in around him and fill in the other spots where Carolina needed guys to step up. They really did that in the second half. You saw it from Henry. You saw it from Seth Trimble that really stepped up in those moments when they needed him. But Caleb was the guy that set the table for everything. And I thought defensively, for the most part, he was really good, especially when he was matched up with Boozer. I thought he did a really good job on Boozer. I thought that was the guy that was really giving Boozer the most trouble all night. Where Henry, I thought there were moments where Boozer was really able to take advantage of him. When Caleb was on him, no. Caleb played incredibly well. He showed you exactly why he's going to be one of the top picks coming up this year in the NBA draft. We were talking when we were coming back over here. I saw moments in the game where it made sense why people are really high on Cam Boozer. But if I'm looking at the two players, I think the better NBA player is very clearly going to be Caleb Wilson. I think there's so much upside to his game. You saw tonight, really, didn't stretch the floor a ton. He doesn't. That's not necessarily what he does all the time, but he hits a big three early in the game. And then the level of difficulty, as I mentioned, with the shots that he was knocking down, were just crazy, man. These were unbelievably well-guarded shots that he was taking in the first half, and he's still able to make it look easy when he's out there on the floor. So, he is something special. I think that he gives Carolina a really good chance to go into Durham and win that game there because he's not going to be afraid of the moment. And credit to him for coming out with the right mindset when the rest of your teammates really didn't look like they were as locked in. Seth Trimble, I think, looked good at points in that first half, so I'll give credit to him. But some of the other guys they were trying to settle into the rivalry. He looked like a guy that had been there and done that. And you could tell that the extra motivation was really paying off for him.
Just saw the graphic up on SportsCenter. The biggest comeback for Carolina in the rivalry against Duke in the past 25 years. So just another thing to kind of point towards when you look at why tonight is so special, why tonight is so important, and why tonight led to the moment at the end of the game that we will address, we will talk about, because I have some thoughts, and my thoughts on it probably will surprise you if you've
Surprised
listened,
me.
if you listen to me over the years and my thoughts on what I think of Carolina basketball and what I expect from a fan base that supports it. Now let's get to I think that the two biggest players that ultimately changed the way this game was decided, and that's Henry Vasar and that's Derek Dixon. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Had this game gone sideways and Carolina loses, and I'm sitting in, I'd be depressed, not happy. Henry Vasar, after the first half, was in line to get the Justin Pierce treatment. And if you weren't here for the Justin Pierce treatment, I once compared him to a wounded duck. That's how little I thought of him as a basketball player during his season with Carolina. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see what I thought about Henry Vasar in the first half. I thought he was soft. I thought he was like cake batter, man. I mean, he was getting it was borderline abuse what was happening to him on the court. And it was really, really frustrating to watch. Oh, by the way, as someone that was sitting on media row that had to try to control some emotions and not make it known that I was there pulling for Carolina to win the game as opposed to Duke. And Derek Dixon, I thought in the first half, you want to talk about someone that I thought was overwhelmed by the moment. The moment finally felt too big for him. It looked too big for him and would make a lot of sense. He's a freshman playing in the greatest rivalry in sports, playing in a gym that, as Jay Billis says on game day this morning, there's a different thickness to the air when you walk into the gym for this game as opposed to other games. And then the second half happened, and what you love about this team and what you should be loving about this team is their resolve and their ability to bounce back when they don't play well. Because there was no way that down 12, Caleb Wilson could do it by himself. There was no way even him and Seth Trimble could have brought them back by themselves. They needed what Henry Vasar gave them in the second half, what Derek Dixon gave them in the second half. And you look at those 2 threes that they made down the stretch. I mean, both those threes led to, coincidentally enough, the loudest I'd ever heard that building. This is, I don't know, the 25th, 30th time I've been at the Dean Dome for a Carolina game. It's my second Carolina Duke game in Chapel Hill. The Derek Dixon three was the loudest it was that I've ever heard it. Then you have the Henry Vasar three, which, by the way, was a terrible shot selection, in my opinion. When that shot went up, I was mumbling things on media row. Should not have been mumbling as a member of the media. Cannot repeat here on the podcast. But those guys made play after play. And then Dixon, we'll play the highlight here in a little bit of Trimble's three. But to find Trimble in the corner, it still doesn't make sense how he was able to see that, make that pass, and be able to make a pass that was, well, all Trimble had to do was catch and shoot. Like, if that pass is off target, then he's going to have to, recover, maybe dribble. We probably have a different outcome, but he's able to just pretty much catch, shoot, one fluid motion. I love the way those two guys bounce back. And, Vasar, we talked about it going in. I thought his matchup with Gongba was going to be the biggest matchup that ultimately determined the game. I don't know if you could say that was proven to be right or wrong, but it was a big factor why Carolina was down 12 at the half, a big reason why they were plus 15 in the second half. And I think, as we know with Derek Dixon, man, you can't write this kid off, because until the final horn, there's a toughness about him that you cannot coach. And there's a confidence that Hubert Davis and this coaching staff has in him that he's going to make the right plays that they need him to make to win ball games like they were able to win tonight. So you got to tip your hat to those guys, because they both probably played their worst 20 minutes of the season in the first half, but played some of the best basketball they played all year long in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in the game where I said with Derek Dixon, can we get him out? Can we put Kyan Evans in? because it looked like the moment was a little bit too much for him. And in that second half, all of a sudden you start to see the tide turn. You start to see things click for him, and things are starting to make a little bit of sense. And so I thought for the most part, when he needed to step up was great. And that's what you're hoping for. Both of his threes were big. And it feels like anytime that he takes a 3-point shot, it's huge. And I think that's exactly what you got tonight. You got a point guard that isn't perfect, man. And I know people are going to look at this. I know whenever I'm on my show on WFNZ during the weekdays, we're just reading off a box score and we're just saying, well, there's only 8 points coming from the backcourt. Those 8 points from Derek Dixon were absolutely huge for Carolina. And then, he had 4 assists in this game too. I thought he did a really good job of sharing the basketball, 3 turnovers as well. But the 4 assists were really what's important. And the most important one, of course, comes at the end, where he just does a great job of driving past Boozer, drawing the extra defender, and then kicking to the corner. And that's a pass that is easy to sail, man, especially when you got Trimble out there as opposed to Caleb Wilson, something like that. Didn't happen. Perfectly accurate, allowed him to catch it in rhythm, throws up the shot. That will be remembered for a long, long time in the history of this rivalry and will be remembered forever in the history of Carolina basketball. And then Henry, it was just a different mindset from him, it looked like, in the second half. And this is something that I think at this point we've got to become comfortable with, that there are going to be moments like this from Henry. There are certain games where he comes out, he's ready to go, 100%, he's giving it his all. Don't think it was that he wasn't giving it his all. Just maybe, again, the moment was a little bit too much for him out of the gate in the first half. But he sort of settles himself down in the second half. You could tell that he was ready for the physicality in the second half. I think maybe that was what stunned him a little bit, was just how physical Duke was on the defensive end of the floor. And in the second half, he comes out, grabs some monster rebounds. He somehow gets a double-double out of the game, even though he had at one point in the first half, late in the first half, he had no points and two rebounds. That was it. And he still somehow gets a double-double. So he was great on the glass when Carolina needed him to be, and then gets some key buckets. Gets matched up against Boozer, and all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, man, this, Boozer, very physical. He's been a really good defender for most of the year. What is Henry going to be able to do against him in this game where he's struggling? Henry just knocking down bucket after bucket, being physical right back to him, and getting where he wanted to go on the floor. That was what I really liked from him in that second half, was wherever Henry wanted to go, Henry was able to get to. And his shot, not going to lie to you, I said the same thing when he took the shot. I said, you got to be kidding me. There is no way. And sure enough, that shot ends up going down. So what a great job by those two guys stepping up after rough first halves. And they are a big part of the reason why Carolina is able to pull off this victory.
Yeah, I thought there wasn't anything technical that Carolina did in the second half. They didn't change anything about what they were doing with Henry. It just came down to, you can put your jockstrap on or you're going to get your butt kicked. And I think he was ready to man up. I think he was, you want me to be pretty blunt, I thought he was ready to nut up. And I thought he took the fight to Duke. And that was so much of it in the first half that there was nothing that I looked at while Carolina was losing. Where, like, last year, there was a clear mid mismatch. Duke was bigger, faster, stronger, whatever you want to use to describe it. But that didn't appear to be the case on paper. Mm-hmm. Carolina matched up very well with Duke's size and their length and their athleticism. It just felt like in the first half, Duke wanted it more. And it was Duke that was getting the offensive rebounds. It was Duke that was diving on the floor for loose balls. It was Duke that was making the extra pass to get Isaiah Evans a clean look from three. Whatever it was, they were doing the little things. But once Carolina started doing those, and it was kind of like the Kansas game, it's kind of what it felt like in the arena. That's kind of just what I keep drawing back to. Once Carolina started to do those things, I really thought they wore Duke down. I thought at the 8-minute mark, even though Duke was still controlling the game, they were up, 62-53 at the under 8 media timeout. I thought Duke was exhausted. I thought Duke was gassed. I thought that's why they started walking the ball up the court, was because I think they knew with where their foul trouble was at, that they were just going to try to manage a game the rest of the way. And look, they can do that. That's something that we criticize Hubert about whenever he does that method, because I don't think Carolina executes well enough when they're to manage a game that way. Duke's good enough to do that, and I got that strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Carolina, they just kept coming. They kept coming, and they kept pushing the right buttons. And it's why you got to exhaust the 40 minutes. 40 minutes is a lot of time. And as the game wore on, Carolina was able to make more winning plays down the stretch. And that's ultimately what was able to push them across the finish line. You've got your computer pulled up over there.
I do. That's what I was looking at earlier.
Go to the split box on Stat Broadcast and take us through the box score, if you will.
Yeah, why not? So Carolina ends up with the advantage over Duke in field goal percentage, 47% to Duke's 45%. Carolina shoots 26 of 55, Duke 28 of 62. Carolina with the advantage 3-point percentage wise and 3-pointers made wise. 8 for Carolina made from beyond the arc of their 19. 7 of 19 from beyond the arc for Duke. Carolina 42%, Duke 37% at the foul line. Pretty good night for Carolina. This is one thing that was a little bit different.
I think only Trimble missed a free throw.
Yeah, the only guy that missed a free throw. He missed 3 of them. 11 of 14 from the foul line, but 79%. You'll definitely take that for Carolina with where they were at coming in. Duke just 5 of 6 from the foul line for 83%. Turnovers, Duke with 8. Carolina with 7. So Carolina, even though they had some costly turnovers there, good job of creating some turnovers on the other side. Points off of turnovers, Duke with the advantage there, 9-6. Duke with the advantage on the glass, 38-26. This is the thing, though, very similar to the Virginia game in that fact where Carolina was dominated on the glass, but it didn't really matter. In the end, Carolina pulls down the important rebounds. They make the important plays, and that is ultimately the difference. Defensive rebounding, Duke with the advantage there, 28-22. Offensive rebounding, Duke with the advantage, 10-4. Second chance points, 17-4 in favor of Duke. Bench points, 7-6 in favor of Duke. Points in the paint, that was an area that was really controlled by Duke early in the game. They finished with 36 points in the paint. Carolina with just 22, but Carolina with 4 in the first half. They come out with 18 in the second half. So a much better, much more focused, intention from Carolina to get the ball down low in that second half. Fast break points in favor of Duke, 8-6. Blocks in favor of Carolina, 3-1. Steals in favor of Duke, 6-5. And assists in favor of Duke, 12-9. The game was tied 2 times. There was 1 lead change in the game, and the most important stat of the game, Carolina led for exactly 0.4 seconds in this game. That is the shortest amount of time of any team in the country so far this year to win a game. So that shows you just how close of a margin it is. Carolina didn't win a lot of these areas that we talked about. We talk about the specialty stats. We talk about that being important for Carolina, but where it mattered the most, Carolina steps up. They hit 1 more 3, and that's ultimately what is the difference in the game for the Tar Heels.
Another stat as we continue to get more coming out from the Dean Dome. Seth Trimble's game winner was the first UNC basket to beat Duke with fewer than 10 seconds left to play since Dante Calabria's tip in with 6.5 seconds to go to beat Duke back on January 31st back in 1996. That was the year that I was born. I was born in September of 96, so about 9 months before.
Didn't remember much.
Before I was brought into this earth. But, that just, again, it just goes to show you that this stuff, this stuff doesn't happen often for Carolina in this rivalry. You have the Austin Rivers shot where they beat Carolina in 12. You got the double buzzer beater, if you will, back during that disastrous 2019-2020 season. Yeah, we have the Caleb Love shot, and that's still the greatest shot in the history of a rivalry that has so many. But the Heels don't have a buzzer beater or a near buzzer beater. And this one, was 0.4. Doesn't technically count as a buzzer beater because Duke did have a chance to technically tie the game. But, it's a moment that will live forever in the history of this rivalry. It's a moment that'll live forever in the history of this program. And it's been, I don't know, about 10 minutes since I watched it. Maybe y'all haven't seen the angle that Carolina basketball put up. We've got a pretty lively crowd with us here late on a Saturday night. We're getting into Sunday morning here. Let's take a look at that game-winning shot from Seth Trimble one more time. Yeah, that's going to be added to the podcast intro very, very, very soon. What's great about that play, as I'll talk about two things here, was one, Hubert talked about it in the presser about how, the last real option is that side kick corner pass to the three. Because if you go back and you watch it, you've got Caleb Wilson that's crashing. And given where Duke's foul trouble was at that point in time, they probably just let I'm not gonna say they let Wilson go, but they wouldn't have been able to do anything. But they were able to take it away, and you're able to get Trimble in the corner. So it's not the first read, but it's a read that when they run that play in practice, that they do work on it. And so I think you got to credit, first off, the play design tremendous by Hubert. You get Derek Dixon going downhill. You get your best player going downhill. Given the foul situation, if you foul, Carolina's going to the foul line. Maybe someone fouls out. And if the game goes in overtime, that really swings the advantage in Carolina's favor. I don't know, though, how Dixon got the ball to the corner. And, where I sit at the media, I'm sitting kind of obviously sitting in the upper deck. But when I saw the ball move across the court, I thought the ball was deflected. I thought the ball had been tipped. I thought that Carolina was either turning it over or Duke was about to knock it out of bounds. And then all of a sudden, I just see it was like Seth Trimble came down from heaven and God just put him right there in the corner. Interesting. Because the ball just goes right to him and he's able to make a three. So I thought that was pretty neat, was hearing Hubert Davis talk about that play. And while it's not the first read or maybe even the second read, they do work on that play. And they do work on getting the ball into the corner. And just a great job by Derek Dixon realizing, hey, I can't get the ball to Wilson, who's crashing. I've got to put the ball in the corner. Duke, for whatever reason, left Trimble open. He's able to knock down a three that'll change his life and his legacy as a Carolina basketball player.
Yeah, it was just a great all-around play. As I said, you get the mismatch that you were wanting because you had Cameron Boozer get switched on to Derek Dixon. And so then when you get that situation, you're going to take the player to the basket. And he's able to turn the corner, something that wasn't easy for Carolina throughout the night. You saw it in the first half. Carolina tried to turn the corner quite a few times in certain possessions and weren't able to do it. But by that point, I think you brought up a great point that Carolina had just worn them out. They started to use a little bit of pace in that second half, and I think that really got to Duke at certain times, especially late. And so I think that was one of those moments where Cam Boozer's a little bit worn down, take him off the dribble. I thought there was a chance that Derek Dixon was going to shoot the shot himself. And when you have that extra defender come up, all of a sudden he does a great job of seeing Seth Trimble open and just kicks it to the corner. I thought it was just, I mean, it's an outstanding play. And for Trimble, it's a tough moment, man. You're by yourself. You're wide open. We know that he's been an inconsistent three-point shooter, but there are moments, and especially in these big games, one of his best three-point shooting games of the season so far was in that game against Kansas. When you need him to step up, he's a guy that's been able to step up. And I think that's what you saw tonight was you had a moment where you're alone by yourself. And I can imagine that moment took forever in his mind. I got to catch this ball, throw it up, and let's see if it goes in. And he did a great job of catching it in rhythm, putting the ball up, and knocking it down. And it's one of those moments that's going to live in Carolina infamy forever, man. I mean, this is one you are going to talk about for the rest of time because it is just such a special moment. And then the celebration afterwards, the night celebration, the storming of the court. It was just a perfect moment for a guy that deserved a moment like this, for everything that he's given to Carolina, for everything that he gave in this game where they needed a steadying presence alongside of Caleb Wilson. He was that guy. And so for him to hit that shot, I could not have been happier for a player than Seth Trimble because his legacy, as we said, was one that we didn't really know what it was ultimately going to be. Now we know.
Yeah, and there was no one else more happier for him than his head coach, Hubert Davis, who talked about it being the perfect guy in the postgame to make that shot.
During this time of NIL and transfer portal, having a kid as accomplished as Seth to stay at one school for 4 years. That shot was made by the perfect person at the right time. He's deserving of being remembered forever, of the commitment and the devotion that he's made to his teammates, to this program, to this university, and to this community.
I got to tell you, you could see the exhaustion, I think, that was on Hubert's face during the presser. And you shouldn't be surprised by that. Coaches don't sleep very much. Even John Shire mentioned that, when he was asked how you're going to sleep this off, and he'd say, well, I'm not, because when you choose the life of coaching, you don't have much time to sleep. Like, if you want to be really good at your craft, it's a pretty much a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day job. But and you should also be surprised because Hubert, whenever he got hired, we all got told when he steps in the lines of competition, you ain't going to see no one that competes more. And it doesn't always show up on the surface, and I think we get frustrated by that. I get frustrated by that because Roy Williams, he wore his emotions on his sleeves. I mean, he was there tonight with 30 seconds to go, getting in that crouch, trying to, implore the team to get a stop. He also had the moment after Trimble made the three where he was going crazy in the stands. But, tonight, man, there were multiple times where, like, Hubert was on the court coaching. And that's not, to the point where if the referee would have stopped the game and said, get your butt back in the coach's box, we would have gotten mad about it because they were telling our guy to do something, but they would have had a legitimate case. I don't know how prevalent it was on the TV screen, but when Carolina was down 6 and they got the first defensive stop there in that final 2.5-minute sequence, I mean, he was basically about 10 feet above the 3-point line on the court, and he was coaching and directing. So, but his comments there about Seth Trimble were perfect. Trimble was the perfect guy. And this is why I think so many Carolina fans, we protect our 4-year players because they usually wait around for nights like this, for moments like this. And so now he's not just a quote. He's not just a guy that owns a Ben and Jerry's. He's a guy that hit a 3 to beat Duke. And who knows what this does for the rest of the season. But, he was the perfect guy, even though he's not the team's best player. In a lot of ways, he is this team's heartbeat. And it was really cool seeing him be able to have a moment like he was able to have tonight. We've got a bunch of comments on the stream. And so what I'm going to do is turn it over to Anthony. He's got his computer pulled up over here on the sides. And we just kind of want to address some of your comments because we know it's late. But y'all have supported us all year long, and we don't get comments like this all the time. So we did just kind of take some time to kind of read and react to some of your comments here on the live stream. So Anthony, what we got?
Yeah, I mean, we've got plenty of stuff here. First of all, Clint Moses does confirm that you were 100% right. Caleb Wilson did in fact play 40 minutes. He was the only only player on either team rather, to score to play that amount of time. He also points out that Boozer took 21 shots to score 24 points. Caleb, much more efficient, 12 shots to score 23 points. And what did you think about his usage in the second half? I mean, I think there are going to be some people that are going to wonder why we didn't see more of Caleb Wilson in the second half. But I think he did just enough when he needed to. And really, I mean, with the way that Henry was playing, with the way he was attacking late, I think that was really the reason you didn't see nearly as much Caleb down the stretch.
Well, I mean, I think you got to look at the way the game was played. And so many people watch a game, and the only way you think you're impacting a game is if you're putting the ball in the basket. Caleb Wilson's impact was all over what Carolina was able to do in the second half. Because of some of those tough shots he made, he actually opened up the floor for some of the other guys to get some of the looks. So, and that just shows you how great he is, that he doesn't necessarily have to put the ball in the basket to still dominate and control the game. And so that's where I really get on. And we got a smart fan base. But I do think there are some people that think, well, the only way you can impact the game is by scoring. No, you can impact the game by the way you defend, by the way you rebound, by the way you run the floor, by the way you pass, by the way you communicate in a pick and roll ball screen, all those things. He was everything and more that Carolina needed him to be when Carolina came back in to start the second half, got back in the game. Who got them back in the game? Who scored the first 4 points?
Yep.
It was Caleb Wilson. Those points were important to set the tone, to let Duke know, hey, we're not going away. We're right here. You're gonna have to knock us out. And they never knocked him out because Caleb Wilson didn't let them knock him out. He willed his team in the first half, and in a lot of ways he led them in the second half. And he's really starting to show how complete and how great of a player he is because he's starting to control and dominate games without having to put the ball in the basket. And, oh, by the way, he scored 20 points or more for the fifth straight game.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, he was great when he needed to be for Carolina scoring-wise, and then there were other things that he was able to do without it. By the way, his defense down the stretch, pretty damn good. I mean, when matched up against Malik Brown, he was good, and even when he got matched up with Cameron Boozer a couple of times, really made it difficult on him down the stretch. So I think the defense, we probably haven't talked about that enough here, but I do think that you hold them without a single point in the final, 2 minutes and change, 2 minutes and 53 seconds, I believe, 2 minutes, 51 seconds without scoring at the end of the game. That shows you just how bought in and what a far cry this team is away from what they were out on the West Coast, where, I mean, 2 minutes, 51 seconds, you were giving up like 10 points in that time span. This group is in a much different headspace. And in this game, where in the first half you allow 41 points, things, Dame Sawers having a big game on you, and you really thought, man, are we really going to let these guys be the heroes of this game? Carolina steps up when they need to on the defensive side.
Yeah, and I think it's a calling card that they're still developing. It's not always there. Excuse me. But they've been able to do this at different points during this current 5-game winning streak. And I mentioned it. If y'all weren't here at the beginning, I'll reiterate this. I thought the final 2.5, whatever it is we want to go officially, I thought Hubert Davis was the best coach on the court. And your guys got to get stops and they got to execute. but you've got to call the right plays. You've got to do the right things that you're wanting that your guys to execute. And I thought they did that. I thought when Boozer got the offensive rebound put back to go up 66-60, I thought that was going to be a nail in the coffin because Carolina switched at a point in time where they didn't have to switch. He's able to get, just deep position down low and grab an offensive rebound and put back. But it felt like after that moment, there was something I felt when Carolina went into that huddle, when it was whatever it was, down 6, 64-58, whatever, maybe 68-62. I knew they still had one more punch. And they were able to get, that 14th or 15th round punch that Duke was not able to get. And so they grew up in the second half. They toughened up in the second half. They did a lot of things defensively that we saw in the majority of the non-conference season. You just got to get that level of intensity and focusedness, grit to carry over more substantially here down the stretch because you got a tough game on Tuesday that you got to defend at a high level. If you want to go win at state, you got to defend at a high level. But like Hubert said in his presser, man, they proved tonight what they're capable of. And kind of like as we are as fans, now we'll be able to hold them accountable because when they're down 6 with 2.5 minutes to go, we expect them to find plays or find a way and make plays to win a ball game.
All right, let's talk final play here. Clint Moses, who's done a great job chiming in here. He says, honestly, I think Dixon, the play or two before when he drove in and missed a layup, did play a factor on why he passed it out the next time. Could be. I think that was definitely, I remember the play you're talking about where he gets right to the basket, doesn't end up finishing inside. Maybe that is part of the reason why he chooses to go out and in that moment throw it to the corner. Also, Greg Ward, just as great as Greg Barnes. He is, of course, chiming in as he always does on these nights. Glad to have you watch him along with us here, Greg. He says he really has some Kendall Marshall in him. I love Dixon. He also said so happy for Seth. And I think that's kind of how we're all feeling here tonight is that, this is a special moment for a dude that's been here, been through the battles at Carolina. And so for him to have this moment, more than just about anybody. I don't know if there's another guy I wanted to hit the shot more. Like, yeah, it would be great for Caleb to have that moment too. But for Seth to be here for 4 years, to go through everything that he's been through, moments where there were Tar Heel fans that didn't want him around here and said, if he goes to the portal, who really cares? And for him to stick it out and get to this point and have that moment, I think is just such an amazing time for Carolina fans here tonight. And I think is something that we're going to be talking about for years and years to come.
Yeah, we got to thank his mom for giving birth to him, breathing life into him, and
sure, yeah,
for raising him to be the young man that he is, and the basketball player that he is. He had the moment that I wanted RJ Davis to have last year. Like when so much about last year was maximizing RJ's final year and being able to put him in a position to achieve some really big things. And Carolina, got a lead in the second half last year, and it felt like RJ is going to get that send-off that he rightfully deserves. And that tonight was not a send-off night, but he had that moment that RJ didn't get. Marcus Page he won a game at Cameron that was able to win Carolina an ACC regular season title, but that was just as much because of Bryce Johnson as much it was him. Joel Berry, I think, was the last guy you could really maybe compare it to, who waited 4 years. His senior night, our first Duke Carolina experience up here at Chapel Hill, where we went to game day, watched the game at Sup Dogs. Berry was sensational that night, but it's why I'll never want to change the way that we do things, because he waited his turn to have in a moment like tonight to experience what tonight will offer. And whenever we're putting together highlight montages or whatever, this will be a highlight that will be shown every single time we're getting ready for the next Duke Carolina game. And yeah, the Dixon Kendall Marshall stuff, it's apropos in the way that they look very similar. They're not fast with their feet. They're fast with their pass. They're not great defenders. They both really struggle to defend pick and rolls. But there's a toughness about them. There's a savviness that they have that really allows them to run the Carolina offense the way that they're able to run the Carolina offense. And so it's going to be a lot of fun watching Derek Dixon grow under the tutelage of Hubert Davis and this coaching staff.
Such a clutch player too, right? Like, you look at the games that he stepped up in and he's played great in. I mean, you got now Georgetown. I mean, not necessarily a big game, but we thought at the time maybe it would end up being a big game. But I mean, you're talking about Kentucky. He puts the team on his back late and makes the play. And then in this game, man, he hits a big three. And that's something that I really hope people don't forget about this game. We're going to remember what Seth did, but at the same time, you don't have that moment if you don't get that three from Dixon, if you don't get that three from Henry. That ends up making it a tied game, getting you to that point. So I cannot rave about him enough. I mean, a guy that just grew up right in front of your eyes here tonight. From that first half to the second half, he was a guy that grew up. And that's what you're hoping for when you get a freshman like that. That's why it is the right decision to stick with him and play him as many minutes as he played tonight. I mean, how many minutes did he play in this game where he didn't necessarily play great? I mean, he played 34 minutes. In a game where he wasn't playing great basketball, Hubert Davis stuck with him, and he ends up making those key plays late. So, I mean, just a tremendous job by him. He definitely deserves a shout-out for the way that he's played and stepped up in big games for Carolina. The last comment that I wanted to throw up here is from Clay Locklear, who sent this in, and I think this is the perfect way to really end things. He says,
we're not done.
Family versus brotherhood. Give me the Carolina family all day, every day, even after the losses. Hell, especially after the losses. That's when the family is most important. The Carolina way still lives on. Coach Smith is smiling down tonight for sure. And I think that's very apropos, because I think that's the special thing about this program, because I know that happened tonight. I know that Coach Smith was watching from above, and he got to see Hubert Davis pull out a massive victory for himself, have one of the most iconic moments in the history of the rivalry, in the history of the program. And I think he definitely had to be smiling in that moment, watching Hubert Davis accomplish that. So, I mean, yeah, what a special – it's always special to be a part of the Carolina family. I think that's something that we value very much here on the podcast. I know that, there are so many that value it. I mean, look at all the former players that were out there tonight. But it's moments like this, even as Clay said, when the families needed the most is after losses, after, other life events and stuff like that. But it's always great to be able to celebrate with the family on a night like tonight.
When we say Carolina family and we talk about it, a lot of people think it's fabricated. They think it's fakakta. They think it's made up BS. And I don't know how, if you observe with what this program does and the way that it carries itself, how you come to that conclusion. We just had the thing last week where Caleb Wilson gets to meet Charlie Scott, the first African-American player that broke the color barrier, not just for Carolina basketball, but for Chapel Hill as a town, and was a big part of the integration of basketball in the South. And at different points in time, you're having milestone players meet milestone players from 20, 30, 40, even as far back as 50 years ago, because it's the only place in the world that it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. And there's no other sports fraternity that can model what the Carolina basketball family is. I think every other program would love to establish that and be able to have that kind of reverence and that connection where it carries on into the professional ranks, it carries on into business, no matter what it is. But it's real, where the brotherhood is just a made-up slogan to brand their program. because that was what Coach K was all about the final 15 years of his coaching career, when the brotherhood kind of came into something that they would even refer to as. So I'll never change it. And I'm not even a part of it. I'm just a Carolina fan. But when you're a fan, you feel like you're a part of it, because the way that the former players that I've had a chance to interview, even guys like Joel Berry that are so gracious to us, Michael Norwood, those guys that open their arms and welcome us in, because we just want to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And that's what Carolina basketball is. Like tonight, we were in a building with 22,000 of our closest friends, and knowing there were thousands and millions watching, at home or around the country, but we all felt the same emotion when that ball went through the hoop to give Carolina the lead. And not many other teams in sports can recreate that the way that Carolina basketball can. Now let's get to the final piece of business, and then we'll hand out some game balls and get out of this edition of the podcast, because it's running late. And to be honest with you, there's still more work that needs to be done. The court storm. This was the lead topic for John Shire in his press conference. It somehow was not asked to Hubert Davis during his 10.5 minutes with the press, but that's a different topic for a different time. We know that Bubba Cunningham has come out and addressed some of the stuff that's happened during the court storm as well, because Duke is alleging that, or John Shire was alleging that, he had some players have some issues, his family have some issues, said it was really, really scary, and all that. First thing, if someone got injured, horrible, despicable. I've got a text from our buddy at Smoke Ludwig, and I hope to God this is just Theo being Theo, but it appears that Theo Pinson in his live podcast admitted to punching one of the Duke players and saying that, quote, that was their free licks. I hope that was Theo just talking in spirit of the rivalry. And I hope that whenever they review this footage, they cannot find anyone harming anyone of Duke's staff, whether it's coaching staff, player staff, any of their personnel. I really hope that none of that comes out. And if it does, then Carolina needs to handle it and handle it accordingly. Even if it's a guy like Theo Pinson, who was on campus earlier today for College Game Day for a UNC Duke alumni roundtable and was carrying around a national championship trophy, because that's who Theo Pinson is. So I hope that was proven. I hope that gets proven to not be true. And if there needs to be legal action that needs to be taken, I hope that Carolina steps up and they do the right thing. To the actual court storm. This is something that I feel very strongly about, very passionate about. When you're top 3 all-time in wins, when you've won 6 NCAA tournament titles, 7 overall, and you've gone to 21 Final Fours, should you storm the court after wins? Most times that answer is no. And I do firmly believe that 99.7% of the time, Carolina basketball should never storm the court outside of when they win a national championship. That should be the only time there is a celebration that takes place on the court involving the program and its personnel, fans, so on and so forth. This is the 3rd time Carolina has stormed the court in my lifetime. In 2005, 2014, and 2026. What do those 3 things have in common? They were signature moments for the program at a specific time against their arch rival. 2005 was the win over Duke. The Marvin Williams putback, the very first highlight you see in our video intro. 2014, a game against Duke that was delayed 8 days because Duke was afraid to travel on some ice, even though Carolina had already mapped out a way to get them here, and Roy Williams was willing to have our buses go pick their butts up, bring them over here. Carolina, 8 days later, used a 1-3-1 zone in the second half. They upset Duke. They stormed the court. And then you have tonight, where Carolina gets its first signature buzzer-beating shot in the rivalry. You come back from 13 down. We've gone through it chapter and verse over the last hour or so. I have absolutely no issue with when it's moments like that and in instances like that with those kids that their parents are spending an inordinate amount of money to send them here to get an education for, to have a moment like that. Because there's two reasons why your kids get sent to school in North Carolina. It's to get a top of the line public education, and it's to be in the building to experience a Duke Carolina game. And if I put myself in an 18-year-old student's shoes, would I not have rushed the court? Would I not have stormed the court after winning a game like that? That answer is absolutely not. I would have kissed Seth Trimble. I would have kissed Hubert Davis. I would have done a lot of things to celebrate a win over them. I hope and pray that no one is injured. And if they are, then Carolina, by God, you better do what we expect you to do. But the court storming in and of itself, I have no issues with it. And if anything, because now you see Duke fans, and this is just the irony and the hypocrisy of those four-eyed nerds and geeks. Y'all claim that the rivalry's been dead because when Caleb Love retired your GOAT 5 years ago, how could you ever top that moment? Did the rivalry look dead today? Did the rivalry feel dead today? Because game day was electric. That was a great 2-hour crowd. There was an energy and a buzz in the arena that wasn't there last year, but it was there tonight. And then, with the animosity, the way that Carolina celebrated, with the way that it felt like, Shire and Hubert were coaching against one another. I think Shire became a villain because his post-game press conference was nothing more than basically a cry for help. Well, I don't want to get the court stormed on me. And, well, how do we only get one foul called against Carolina in the second half? Don't blow a 13-point lead. Tell your guys to play tougher, clown. Like, it's not dead. And I am so sick and tired. And this only happens because people aren't in it. But I'm so sick and tired of being told this rivalry's dead. And it doesn't mean anything. Because I think tonight proved that it still matters. It still has a heartbeat that you cannot describe unless you experience it, unless you live it. And 9 times out of 10, man, I would be against us storming the court. But in a night like this, in a moment like tonight, that's going to be as historic as it's going to be. I understand why a program like Carolina stormed the court, and therefore I cannot criticize the action of the court storm.
No, I can't criticize it either. I think, as you said, this is not the first time that Carolina has stormed the court. So it really shouldn't be all that stunning. People should definitely know that this is something that happens from time to time at Carolina when you have special moments like this. And you got a walk-off three-pointer in this game for the first time in this rivalry, beat Duke at home. And what did you expect was going to happen, man? You knew that Carolina fans were going to be incredibly excited. They've had other moments where you could argue maybe they should have never stormed the court. Duke, it doesn't, this guy commenting in here, Duke never storms the court. Well, I mean, yeah, you guys are a bunch of losers. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you guys don't know how to have fun. You sure as hell know how to throw water bottles and stuff at our players when we were celebrating a couple of years ago in your building. So don't come crying to me about the court storm tonight and what happened. Now, if there is actual physical assault and everything like that, well, then, yeah, things need to be taken to probably a legal matter. And if that ends up happening, then it is what it is. You got to do the right thing in that scenario. But in terms of, getting hit with water bottles and stuff like that, guys, our players were hit with them a couple of years ago and nothing was said. The head coach of Duke pretty much sat silent up there. Didn't hear anything from him. So I don't really feel sorry for that. I think that's just part of the rivalry. And frankly, in terms of people complaining about the refs, you can just kiss my ass. I really don't care about what you think, whether or not Carolina defended without fouling. I watched the game. Show me a foul that wasn't called in that second half on Carolina. And you wouldn't have been complaining about that had the game actually been in control, like Duke should have taken control of the game, and Carolina would have had to start fouling. You wouldn't have been complaining then, would you? I don't think so. You would have said, oh, this is great. Carolina's got to get all the way to 7 fouls. probably would have ended the game right there. But because your team isn't clutch, because you guys continue to struggle, and John Shire, this is something about John Shire, man. And yeah, he might have became a villain tonight. One thing that he didn't become tonight is a choke artist. That's what he's been his entire time at Duke. It's so far, and hopefully that's something that keeps up, because I love it, man. And it happens again tonight. You had the lead, you were in control, and you choke it away yet again. So, I think the court storming was 100% fine. Anybody that thinks differently and thinks that it ruins the state of the program, it shows that Carolina isn't one of the top programs in college basketball. Whatever, man. These students got to celebrate a really fun moment in the rivalry. There was 4.4 seconds to go, but ultimately it probably shouldn't have mattered. I mean, 0.4 seconds, you're not getting a shot off. Everybody knows that. So I think it was an iconic moment in the rivalry, and I think it's something that we will definitely not be apologizing for anytime soon.
Yeah, and just to bring some clarity to the situation, Theo Pinson has quoted his own tweet, and it does appear that Theo was just being Theo. Just having some fun, some poking, because he says, the fact y'all think that is funny, get serious. I would never do anything like that in my lifetime. So yeah, Theo was probably something you should have said. That answer is probably no. But
we've all been there.
There was a lot of things Theo Pinson did on the court that he shouldn't have done. There were a lot of shots he took that he should have never taken. There were some passes he made that he should have never tried to make. But that's what makes Theo one of the more entertaining Carolina basketball players of the last decade. It was really cool having him on campus today, and pretty much just live tweeting everything he did, including eating at Sutton's. And I'm just glad they had enough food to feed a Raymond Felton, because Uncle Ray has put on some pounds in ways that you can only –
I can't say nothing. You and me, Ray. You and me, baby.
Y'all both got a gut that some people envy. But yeah, I mean, look, I hope no one's injured. But you don't want the court stormed on. You don't blow a 13-point lead. You want more than one foul called. Tell your players to be more aggressive, or do what your mentor did, and cuss out officials and threaten to have them fired if you don't get calls. You can go that route too. I'm glad that John Shire has a little bit more decency to do that. Although I thought tonight this was the 6th game I've watched him coach in person. This was the most complaining I've seen him do in the 6 games I've been at. But regardless, this all would have been avoidable, Duke, if you don't blow the lead, if you win the game. And you can't play victim every single time. Like, at some point, you just got to walk into the press conference and say, well, if we win the game, the court doesn't get stormed. I'm just glad this time his players had the state of mind to not try to trip someone, unlike Kyle Filipowski, who stepped his foot out against Wake Forest, and then they wanted to cry victim after the fact as well. Let's hand out some gay balls, and then let's get out of this edition of the podcast. Could give it to Caleb Wilson, could give it to Seth Trimble, and those could be rightful. I'm gonna give my game ball to the crowd.
Interesting.
That environment is what you would want the Smith Center to be every time Carolina takes the court, but you have to just put context into matters. There's not going to be that same crowd when you're playing North Carolina Central and the game's over by halftime. We've always said that we know there's issues with the building. That's why they're looking to either renovate or relocate. But for big games, that crowd delivers. And it started at 10 o'clock this morning, where you could tell that game day. I thought that was an energetic crowd that was, with the Duke fans that were in attendance, and that happens all the time. But last year, Duke overtook game day. And it pretty much became Duke's fans out cheering our fans. And it kind of set the tone for what was going to be a disappointing result. That was not the case today. And then I got into my seat with 82 minutes to go before tip. And from the moment I sat down, until I literally walked out of the building. That place did not stop. There was an energy and a buzz, and I think an overall belief that it was going to be one of those nights. And for as much as the players on the court deserve credit for making the plays, I thought the crowd impacted the game in ways that you want to see a crowd impact the game. And guess what it gave us? It gave us another core memory of the Smith Center, of the Dean Dome. Look at some of the shots that are coming out from social media. I cannot tell you, I cannot express to you how loud it was. I will send out some of my stuff tomorrow because I took some footage, but there's no way that I can do it justice. So I feel justified giving it to the crowd because I'm really envious. I could not be one of the 22,000s that were outwardly celebrating. Believe me, there was a reason why there were certain times in the game where I sat up so I could put my hands underneath the table and I could clap. And there were other times that I moved my hands up to where I could clench a fist whenever Carolina did something wrong, because I cannot help but to cheer for a team that I love so much, a program that I love so much, for a rivalry that I love so much. The fans are a big reason why Carolina emerges victorious. That's why I'm comfortable giving them the game ball, even on Seth Trimble's night.
Game ball, Seth Trimble hit it. It's the second biggest shot in the rivalry. How can we not give him the game ball? 16 points in the game, but the most important, those three at the end. Seth Trimble, my game ball.
That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast, guys. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website. That's heeltoughblog.com. I've got a recap to go right. It'll be posted for you on Sunday morning. So when you're waking up and you're drinking your coffee, you're getting ready to go to church, whatever it is you're doing, you can get up and read about Carolina's dramatic and thrilling come-from-behind win over Duke. As we continue to take you through the basketball season, we will have Super Bowl 60 coverage on the website, as well as Drake May looks to win his first Super Bowl as a quarterback. Regardless, there will be a Tar Heel that wins a Super Bowl, as you've got Tar Heels on both sides. So there will be some Super Bowl 60 coverage on the website as well. That's heeltoughblog.com. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Just search the Four Corners Podcast. Will pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer of the podcast, the best way to keep up with us, if you're new here, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog. Or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. The second that we go live, y'all can jump in, be a part of the conversation, and fill up the comment section like you have tonight. So if you haven't done so already, go do that. That way you're up to date with our live feed coverage as well. But with that, folks, that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels and go to hell, Duke.